Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we are off-site visiting Hampton University's museum and going to talk about their amazing collection of African American art primarily. Our host today is Dr. Vanessa Thaxton-Ward. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for inviting us back.
Now, I'm going to start by saying we're in one of the more contemporary rooms, and that might surprise people because I think what you're best known for is going to be the Banjo Lesson.
That's correct.
And some of your older pieces. So let's go ahead and start there, even though we're not sitting in that room. What makes that piece so special and so really definitive?
Okay, the Banjo Lesson by Henry O. Tanner actually is our first piece of African American art. We obtained that piece in 1893 when our board member, Robert Ogden, donated the piece to Hampton. And he was friends with Henry O. Tanner, who was a wonderful artist, very, well known at that time.
It was contemporary when he acquired the piece.
It was contemporary,
it doesn't have that
yes.
historical look that we put on it now.
Right. And it really, though, invites our audience to the history of African American art. We have up here 200 years of African American art, with the Banjo Lesson being our premier piece, or one of our premier pieces, because we have wonderful pieces. But Henry O. Tanner, by far, is one of the most well-known African American, or let's just say American artists.
And for some reason, I think that's part of the appeal of that piece, is that it is so universal in that I think, or it appears at least to me to be a grandfather, grandchild, or that sort of age, generational, tender moment, passing down of wisdom, sharing, that is so universal. And maybe some of the things that speak to revolution or slave or things that are uncomfortable for some people to remember or focus on, that's not uncomfortable. There's nothing uncomfortable about it. It's warm and wonderful and multicultural, multi-generational.
Yes, it's a genre painting, and Tanner did actually a couple of those. And with the Banjo Lesson, everyone that comes in to visit the museum and when we're giving tours really identifies with that piece, as you say, the grandfather figure, passing on a tradition. And this piece was based on people that he saw up in the North Carolina hills when he was in the States recuperating from an illness. But he has another piece similar that we have that was also donated to the museum or to the university by Robert Ogden, called the Bagpipe Lesson. And it's a similar type of genre piece with an older gentleman teaching a young boy how to play the bagpipe.
Interesting. And obviously, the artist saw something in that and recreated it, reproduced it, played around with that theme a little bit to get what he was looking for. So what are some of those other pieces that we should look for when we come from the earlier part of the collection?
We have Duncanson, Joshua Johnson. We also have a beautiful piece by Thomas Day, who was a furniture maker, and he was a free man and lived in Virgilina, which is right on the coast or right on the line of Virginia and North Carolina. And so his work is really interesting and has been studied quite a bit. And then you follow the journey from the 19th century into the Renaissance and beyond. And here we see that the art takes on a different look because the artists were beginning to look at their own culture. So you see more color, you see more demonstration of the Great Migration. We have some wonderful pieces that look at churches, a church picnic, but then you go into the city and you see people working in factories. You also have a lot of the artists, again, leaving the United States and going overseas to practice as artists because of the racial tensions in the United States. So you see some of that also.
So you see European influences, or they come back and look at their culture with different eyes almost, as someone who's experienced something else.
Yes. And a lot of those pieces we acquired through the Harmon Foundation, which was a philanthropist, it was an organization in New York that was collecting art of African American artists at that time, and they supported a lot of artists. And so they, when they closed, they donated quite a bit of their work to HBCUs, or historically black colleges and universities, as well as the National Portrait Gallery. So you will see some of those pieces, and that's how we acquired a lot of those, as well as artists that worked with the WPA during that time.
Okay, and so you see that sort of from, what would that be, the 20s, that Renaissance period, the Harlem Renaissance, and there's a lot of kind of two-dimensional-ish folk art and different elements that begin to come out then too.
Yeah. And the other thing about that gallery, we didn't really focus on the Harlem Renaissance because there were a lot of Renaissance going on. We also had the Chicago Renaissance. So we have a piece by Archibald Motley that is traveling right now, but black belt. So you see that again showing city life and things that are different. And then our gallery, we move into the 60s and beyond. And so that's kind of the gallery that we're sitting in now. And you see a lot of artists, some that are still living and some that have passed on. But you see really more color, a lot of mixed media.
I mean, it's almost goes back to, it's sort of old and sort of new. Like some of it looks a little quilt-like influence of, you know, the old traditional quilt makers, but also brighter, fun, maybe influences from, you know, almost Spanish or different kinds of cultures, it feels like to me.
Exactly. We have a lot of groups. Some of the pieces in here will be come out of a group. For instance, we have pieces by a group called Afrocobra. And Afrocobra is African Bad Relevant Artists or something. They will kill me because I messed up their acronym, what it means. But some of the more colorful pieces, like you see the piece behind us that looks like a quilt by James Phillips, who is a member of Afrocobra, and then you see in the corner over there, there's a piece by Murray DePillars, and they're both in that group. And they are looking at African culture, they're looking at African American culture. Many of them were muralists coming out of Chicago, and so there are a lot of different influences. And the piece by James Phillips, is called Soul and Spirit of John Biggers. So and we'll talk about John Biggers when we go over and look at the Hampton tradition and the arts. But John Biggers was known for his background with the quilting in it and African textiles. And so you see that reflected in James Phillips' piece.
That's so interesting. And this one, I mean, I just love also because we're just sitting here so close to it, but you know, The Last Barbecue, that wonderful take on the Last Supper and what it might look like. And it's humorous but serious. It's fun, but there's a lot of depth to it.
Right. This piece is by a woman artist, and we are trying to increase our collection of women artists from this period as well as earlier. This is Margo Humphrey, and she's a printmaker, one of the few female printmakers as well, and she's at the University of Maryland. And this piece, The Last Barbecue, is one of our visitors' favorite pieces as well. And it is a play on the Last Supper, but also it looks at the historically black college and university background. So you'll see some of the people at the Last Supper may have on like a university shirt and stuff. And when Margo Humphrey was here for an exhibit, she talked about this piece because she kind of came out of a very religious background, and so she, growing up, and she's just kind of incorporating different feelings and different things that she experienced in this piece. But again, this is one of our favorites. People always request, do you have a poster of that? So we did get permission from the artist, and we were finally able to make a poster so people could take a bit of this home with them.
That's great. Okay, so the next room that we're going to
Yes, the next room we have Hampton Traditions in the Arts. We have some pieces by Elizabeth Catlin. We have one of the largest collections, and she was one of the teachers here early in the 1940s. She came through to visit and work at Hampton, but she really influenced and worked with some of the artists like John Biggers, Samela Lewis, as well as Mr. Gilliard, who was one of the ceramic teachers here. So we have pieces by him. And Hampton had a very strong art department in the 40s. That's when it began.
Wow, I had no idea. And I was walking through that room and didn't realize the theming. And I'm like, went to Hampton, taught at Hampton. The amazing amount of talent.
Oh, exactly. And as I said, that was a very thriving period at Hampton at that time. So we have Percy Jennings, who was a student at Hampton in the 40s. And she worked with Charles White along with John Biggers and Samela Lewis when he was here to paint the contribution of the Negro to democracy in America. And Percy Jennings went on to teach in Norfolk Public Schools and to consult. And so we have one of her beautiful pieces of the family of wood carving that she completed. And so just wonderful art. I think you know, the students were influenced by what they saw here because Hampton's collection is very old. So again, with the Banjo Lesson being one of our first pieces, and it used to be on display in the library, and this building was formerly the library. Right. So when you came in the door, you would see that behind the circulation desk. So these students, you know, the students were exposed to art, and we're continuing to expose them to the art.
Do they come here very often? I mean, other than art students, is this like a popular place? I would just think it would be a place where you would just go, you know, you'd get some energy from visiting here.
We often find students sitting on one of the benches here, just recuperating from the day and getting that energy. Of course, they are assigned to come for certain classes, University 101, Humanities. Sometimes teachers send them.
But I'm also going to say, as a resident of Hampton, it gets to be my museum too. I mean, you guys are here for the entire community.
We are here for the community, and I think a lot of people don't realize that because we are on a university campus.
Well, and you're more set off. You know, when I first came here, you kind of almost had to drive through the campus, and now, you know, the bridges moved, you're a little more secluded, you got to go through the gate, you got to get a parking pass, but it's easy to do. It's just you got to bridge that separation in your mind.
And we're free and open to the public. How many museums of this caliber are free?
Exactly. It's very rare. Even on college campuses. I visited a lot of campuses with my son, and a lot of times while he was on tour, I would say, do you have a museum I could visit? And a lot of them still charged admission.
That's true.
You know, it's rare.
And we're open Monday through Friday from 8 until 5. And Saturdays 12 to 4. So we're here all the time, all year round. So
and as you said, 200 years of African American
200
art.
years of African American art. And people are really surprised because when they come in, they say, wow, I didn't know it was so large in here. I didn't know you had all of this. And so we really welcome the community to visit us.
Well, so we're going to encourage people to come more than once. So if you haven't been here recently, come by because it could look very different.
That's correct.
Even some of your premier pieces you loan out from time to time, as you said. So that gives you a chance to show something different.
Exactly. It's so fun. It's almost like having a library. We can go in art storage and pull a piece and write a label and install it in. Okay. You have something new to see.
Well, that sounds wonderful. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I hope you will get out and go by and visit this museum, whether you have a couple hours or whether you have just a few minutes, because it is a wonderfully educational, restorative, and exciting place to visit. Thank you.